investigate that line. We hoped to investigate the full length, the full 400 feet, but we could only get 35 feet in before we found that the pipe was nearly completely blocked with stone and other material. So we couldn't inspect the full length. We only saw the first 35 feet, and we saw several weld failures just like this. So why is that a problem? If we can't discharge through the primary line, through the primary effluent discharge, it in effect causes a hydraulic restriction and can impact plant operations. So it was extremely important to us to get a quick remedy to this, in that we didn't want to cause a disturbance to the daily life and operability of the plant.
How did those stones get in there?
Those were actually, when this line was originally built years ago, they had backfilled stone above it. So for some reason, which we kind of estimated as to why it happened, the pipe separated those joints. When it separated, material could fall in there, and it in effect built up over time an amount of debris. And again, we got about 35 feet downstream, and we estimated it was probably 75% blocked. So it was certainly, even at the time, impacting plant operations. But even though the primary line was partially clogged, the bypass line still served to discharge that treated effluent. So we were still okay under normal conditions. Yeah, that's the bypass line. It's called the bypass line. There's about 15 feet of vertical separation between the two. Again, we had initially hoped that we could just maybe repair a short section. And looking at the video and unable to determine the condition of the remainder of the pipe, we settled on a full-length replacement option. We had a question of what's the condition of the remainder of the pipe? Couldn't see it. How would we remove that stone and debris from that additional 360-odd feet so that we could inspect it? So you'd need divers underwater with, we couldn't even imagine what equipment we would use to actually clean that pipe so that we could inspect it. So we landed on a full-length replacement, and we knew it would be costly. We knew it wouldn't be quick if we were trying to clean it. So knowing all of that, we knew we were going to be working in the river for a replacement. We knew we were going to require permits from Corps of Engineers or TVA, and of course we'd need plans approval from Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So, in light of that, to expedite the process, we utilized a design-build approach to develop construction plans and documents for this project. We brought a consultant in, we brought CDM Smith in, who is familiar with plant operations. We brought Garney in, who does marine work, does heavy lifting, has the barges in effect just upstream at Jones Street. They were available, so we developed a team, KUB staff, contractor, consultant. We met weekly to go through design and constructability issues. That fast-tracked our construction document preparation, which allowed us to get information to the permitting agencies that much quicker. A couple of key components I wanted to mention as part of the design process was a bathymetric survey that was required, and of course a geotechnical investigation. Bathymetric survey is, in effect, we mapped the surface elevation of the river bottom. And what that allowed us to do is prepare construction plans showing a profile for our new line along the bottom of the river. And it told us how much material would need to be removed to actually establish a trench for that new line. Now, I wanted to make mention that the new line is in effect being laid parallel to the existing line with probably 6 or 8 feet separation between the two. So again, fast-tracked the permitting process, got information to the permitting agencies that much quicker. And the other issue, and probably which more people see, was the Greenway detour. We worked to establish a plan, in effect a traffic control plan that we submitted to TDOT, City of Knoxville, Parks and Rec folks with the city. They were on board with our plan, and it was implemented shortly thereafter. We knew that in effect the Greenway was going to be out of commission during construction. We were going to be constructing at the riverbank for a period of time, and it would take us a while to rebuild the riverbank and rebuild that Greenway so that pedestrians could continue to use it. Some construction photos here. This is actually a 48-inch ductile iron 45 fitting with restrained joint gaskets. And I'm really just showing this to give you folks a sense of size of the pipe that we were working with out there. Again, 45, this is a 45-degree bend, which allows you to sort of turn the pipe in a different direction. In the next slide, I'll actually show you where we placed that fitting. This is some work that occurred along the riverbank. Again, we're about 25 feet deep here, and it required an extensive shoring plan in that we were working at that depth along the river's edge. At the end of this pipe is actually where that fitting was going to be placed. Again, we used restrained joint gaskets so that that pipe won't pull apart, so that it won't separate. And we eventually encased that section of pipe in concrete, placed rebar around it, and then poured concrete over that to again, secure it. Again, we're working about 25 feet deep here, required a professional engineered stamped shoring plan. We're very fortunate here that shoring sealed up really well and almost created a watertight area for the folks to work there. So that allowed us to work a bit quicker. We were fortunate in the shoring installation. This is actually some work that occurred along the river's edge. The barge on your left with the crane on it is actually what is used to lower the pipe in place. The barge on the right with the excavator on it is actually preparing the trench for the placement of the new pipe. So those two barges kind of worked in tandem with each other to excavate and set new pipe. Again, we're working, this is adjacent to the bank, and we're just beginning to work out into the river at this point. Next site, our next photo here is we're actually further out into the river, and again, you can see the barge that's closer to us in the foreground there is actually placing a section of 48-inch ductile iron pipe in the river. The barge in the back with the excavator is actually preparing the trench. Again, it does the excavation and the crane lowers the pipe. The smaller boat there on the right is actually your dive crew. Those are your folks that make sure the diver is operating safety and has communication with the diver. There's a lot of communication required in between the pipe folks and the divers, because the diver's down there with his hands kind of feeling around, making sure that the pipe's belled up correctly. And you can actually see in the lower right-hand section, that's the diver actually, his head kind of peering out of the water. He moves out of the way as they're lowering the pipe in just for safety reasons. Again, we're probably at about 200 feet out into the river at that point. Once the pipe is placed, we actually place stone over the pipe. Once the trench has been prepared, we place the pipe in the trench, we bury it in stone. And so stone is delivered to the excavation equipment there via these smaller barges and a tugboat. So that's kind of the final piece of the puzzle. Once the pipe's placed along the river bottom, we actually bring stone out and bury the pipe. And that, I think that photo was actually taken last week, so that's a fairly timely photo. Talk about project timeline. I'd mentioned that we became aware of this problem early March of last year. Through our design build process and getting all of the partners at the table together, we were able to order pipe early in April, submit our documentation to the permitting agencies. April 23rd, we heard back from Corps of Engineers. Mid-July, received TDEC approval later in July, and we actually started construction August 4th. Going into this project, I was nervous, understanding some of our, I guess, issues with Corps in the past. That can be a lengthy process. Corps was very helpful in sort of expediting our process. They understood the emergency nature of the work we were doing. They were very helpful along the way. We were very fortunate, and that was great news when Corps communicated the permit to us. That was wonderful news. Current status, and I'd hoped to have a little better timing today, but I'll share the reason for that. The pipe was actually placed in the river on the 6th. Backfill was actually completed yesterday evening. I'd hoped that the new pipe would be operational today, so the timing would have been perfect, but we're not going to have it operational until next week. And the reason we didn't have it operational today, Mother Nature wouldn't cooperate. We were concerned about rain this morning. Nayland Greenway is actually going to reopen tomorrow. We've issued, I think, communications today making folks aware that we'll reopen the Greenway, the permanent Nayland Greenway, tomorrow. We'll have the detour remain in place, I guess, for a week or so until we begin taking it down. It'll actually be a lengthy process to remove the detour and those water-filled barricades. At that point, we're basically ready for project closeout. And I did want to make mention of project cost. We're estimating that this project will finish up in the neighborhood of $2.6 million. But again, I think that price is probably better than it would have been expected had we procured this work using traditional means. Again, we already had a contractor on site who had the necessary equipment to perform the work, so we certainly got a deal on his mobilization. Secondly, the design bid process, we ended up using a early contractor involvement and used a design build process, which brought the contractor to the table much earlier. So I feel like we saved money using that process. So with that, I'd like to make mention of some of the folks that were helpful along the way. We certainly had a lot of partners that were helped us and provided assistance throughout. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention plants and procurement. A lot of the work that we performed during this process required plant shutdowns. I think including a shutdown coming up next week will be the 4th plant shutdown. So that requires a lot of coordination and planning from plants and system maintenance staff, so I'm very appreciative of that. They were key players in all of this. External, City of Knoxville and TDOT, and working with us on the detour, and of course Corps of Engineers, and they expedited again the nationwide permit that was necessary for the work within the river itself. I also want to make mention of Garney Construction and CDM Smith. The partnership that we had with those players was great. CDM was super, and Garney was very accommodating throughout. So with that, questions and comments?
What is the useful life of that particular pipe, and were we in the process of assessing the durability of that pipe when this problem was discovered?
Well, for one thing, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. The pipe was high-density polyethylene, which the record drawings said it was high-density polyethylene, record drawings from the late 70s, but we didn't believe that. We didn't believe that they would have installed polyethylene at the time. Polyethylene was a newer material in the late 70s, and the polyethylene used then and the installation techniques used then probably aren't on par with what we use today. So I wonder, and we've sort of asked ourselves, what caused this to happen? As we uncovered it, it appeared that that poly was under a lot of stress. It almost had some bending stress as it turned out of the vault and into the river, and we think that that stress is actually what caused it to fail. So I don't know if it was a materials problem or an installation problem or a combination of both. But I can tell you this, a lot of plants were sort of built and upgraded along the same timeline as Kauai. This is not an uncommon problem. I was actually reading about a utility up north, and whereas our discharge line in this case is 400 feet, theirs was 3,000 feet. There's discharge out into the ocean, about 2,000 feet out into the ocean. So what I thought was unique to us, other folks are actually experiencing nationwide.
Even a flawed construction lasted 50 years.
Yeah, and ductile iron, I would argue, is probably a superior material to polyethylene. It's certainly easier to repair underwater than polyethylene. Another one of our concerns is how do you repair polyethylene underwater? Certainly can't weld underwater. So one of our reasons for selecting ductile iron is durability, availability, and in present conditions, it's cheap compared to other materials, oddly enough. And Garney, they kind of moved to the front of the line with their purchasing power. They buy nationwide, and when they buy pipe, they kind of move to the front of the line. So that was beneficial as well. We got pipe delivery a bit quicker than we would have otherwise.
So this may be a simple question for you, but as a non-engineer, how do you connect the sections? Do you weld it? And if so, do you weld it underwater? Or do you bolt it together? Or how does it come?
Those restrained joint gaskets, in effect, you just push them together and they lock.
Huh.
So you can't pull them. Normal pipe, it just has a rubber gasket in there or whatever material you might use for a gasket, and you can just pull those apart if you use enough force. You can't pull these apart.
It's like one of those things you used to put your finger in and pull it out. Yeah.
It's got teeth in there that just won't allow you to pull it apart. And on the water side, we use, on the distribution side, we use restrained joint gasket quite often. So that's not necessarily unique to KUB. We use restrained joint gasket.
When you've got the crane drops it under the water, you've got divers who are pulling it together?
So the divers are checking to make sure that everything is oriented properly.
Uh-huh.
And then they actually used come-along equipment to sort of crank it and cinch it into place. And that excavator would also push.
Yeah.
So he could push and help give it some force to push it in place.
Cool.
So, yeah, that was a tricky part, certainly the installation underwater.
And so how did we become aware of it? We became aware of this because we became aware of this due to normal maintenance issue? I mean, how did we become aware of this? And
The settlement along the Greenway was, once we saw that, that was just, immediately we're like, uh-oh, we've got a pipe problem.
okay, so my question is, I guess, so that was a part of some normal maintenance process?
I would like to say it was, but I think somebody stumbled upon it.
Okay.
We
One of
do
the
normal
walkers.
inspection of the pipe, but it's with divers. So the divers do check the condition
do?
underwater
Okay.
on periodic, but we don't check them above ground.
Okay.
And
Okay, my next question.
Yeah.
So what did we learn from this and what's changed?
so, yeah, you're exactly right. Doing above-ground inspection, keeping an eye on it above ground is certainly a key part, and making sure you're following up on your inspections, that what the divers see.
Herschel, thank you so much. I think that presentations like this help me understand so much of what we don't see necessarily in terms of the work at KUB. Is this the first time as the board that we hear about this project, or was it talked about before I was on the board, or
First time, yeah.
was there a reason we didn't, it was such a huge project, we're always getting updated, so I was just curious as to, had we not heard of it before?
Because we never were in a situation where we were in any crisis. I mean, we had a pipe now. We also had the bypass in place. It was a unique project. We were never in what I call an emergency state. We want to get it done. Sorry, my glasses are fogging up in a sense. So we just said, engineering, get it done. Let me know how it's going. And we still had the bypass pipe still functional. So, yeah.
As difficult as it was, it could have been worse. Every step of the way, we were fortunate. Any sort of sticking point that happened along the way, we were fortunate.
I think Commissioner Caballero makes a good point. In this particular instance, it would have been, I would like to have known, just because it was discovered by people walking or running and it changed everything. So public might say to us, what's going on over there? And it would have been nice for us to be able to say, well, we discovered something and we were able to jump into it and fix it. So, I mean, we could turn it, I know we typically don't hear about things unless there's an emergency, but this might be a good learning for us if we've got a major project like that the public might ask a question about just let us know, so we can be the advocates. So, thank you. Any other questions?
The second was just replaced probably within the last 5 years. So it's new.
Great.
Are there warranties on those projects? Like 50 years is a really long time, like Sarah was saying, that the company does the work, they have a responsibility?
We would have a 1-year warranty with the contractor typically, and you could get additional warranty, but typical warranty is just 1 year on installation.
Interesting.
Just a point of clarity. It was actually the plant manager at the time, Josh Johnson, who actually was doing a routine look around. So it was not an official inspection, but it was actually detected by the KUB.
That's good. That's good to know. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hall, would you please express the board's gratitude to your team and to all the
Absolutely.
partners you had for being able to address this so efficiently and effectively? Thank you. All right. Anything else?
I do have one more thing we'll add. I want to have Susan give you an update on our career fair we had last week. We made where you all were last month. We're going to have it. We had it for 2 days at Pellissippi State Community College at Magnolia, and Susan will give you the details.
Yeah, we were really overwhelmed by the response. We had, as we mentioned this at the last board meeting, a 2-day job fair at the Pellissippi campus, and we had about 60 KUB employees involved, so that the people who came could really learn from, straight from the horse's mouth what these jobs are that we were looking for. Did a lot of personal outreach through members of our staff, and the HR staff worked really hard to make this a good event. We had over 350 individuals pre-register for the job fair. More than 200 of those actually did show up, and about 150 of them interacted with us in a really meaningful way, either coming to speak directly to people who are experts in the jobs that we were posting for, or leaving a resume, or applying on the job. We have 77 who have submitted active applications as of yesterday. We identified about 45 really high potential prospects. That's where someone really had a connection with somebody when they were talking with our department reps and said, you know, these people would really maybe be a good match for us. And most of those have applied, so we'll be tracking them through the application process. For the ones who haven't yet, we're following up with them directly, because since they had to register, we've got their contact information. So we're really very hopeful that this is going to result in some good hires for us in a variety of different jobs. And I know they're already talking about how we can do this again, because I think it was really popular with the community. So we really want to appreciate all the KUB employees who were involved, HR staff, our diversity, equity, inclusion folks helped us make a lot of contacts in the community, and then just those department reps who were there to say, this is what my job is, so that people can really have a good feel for what a career at KUB would be like. So we're pleased with it. So if you hear anything, any other suggestions from people that you may know who might have attended, send them our way, because we'll incorporate it next time.
Thank you. As I look back over Gabe's report, I have to say there's 4 great examples of how professional our organization really is, and it gives me great reason to be proud. I'm involved in a lawsuit right now with a nonprofit that did not do annual disclosures and had all kinds of conflicts of interest that are going to end up costing them a lot of money. The fact that the staff has listened to concerns from the customers about proactive notifications and how important that communication is, and we're taking steps to move forward, not just continuing to talk about it. The fact that we were able to address the outfall project so effectively and efficiently, and reaching out to the community to try to not just wait for them to come to us for jobs, but to go out and proactively try to recruit people to be here. Just all speaks to how we're a learning organization. We continue to try to get better each year, and Gabe, congratulations to you and your leadership team for that. Are there any members who have signed up to speak today? Okay, seeing none. Any other business to come before the group? Again, yeah.
I don't know if this is during this part of the meeting or if it's during our lunch, but I did want to discuss a KWEA request to meet.
I think lunch.
Okay.
Yeah. Ron, thanks again for your willingness to serve and welcome, and I declare this meeting adjourned.